Mic check 1 2. Mic check 1 2. Family, let me know if I'm coming in clear. We're gonna try this one more time. Peace and blessings, family. Welcome back to Sirius Mindz. I do apologize for the technical difficulties that we're having. So the music is not going to be playing for too long. We're going to dive right back into the topic that Ms. Kwan was elaborating on as far as Obama in regards to Black wealth. And she was bringing up some very valid points about redlining, which is something we need to have a discussion about. Absolutely. And for those of you who are not really clear on what redlining is, I invite you to look up, research, do a quick search on what the term redlining means, so that we can have a serious conversation. Again, welcome to Sista Cypha. And tonight we're going to be talking about Obama and Black wealth. Special shout out to Professor Griff, my dear mentor and brother, for allowing us to have this platform and allowing us to have this conversation. Those of you who are on the regular email list, you were sent out the new link if you want to join the live. I had to restart and actually send out another live link. Between my technical difficulties and actually Google, we were having some issues, but I think we kind of got them worked out, so we're ready to go. Family, we have quite a few people in the house. The room is populating. Please hit that like button and make sure that this video gets shared and it shows up. The more likes we have, the more that this video is actually pushed on the recommended list of the YouTube feed. This is the type of information that actually all of our community, everyone in our communities, need to know about. So please make sure you hit that like button so we can get this information out to the masses. Okay. We're going to go ahead and get started. We don't want to waste any more time because we were having a good conversation until we got cut off. So Ms. Kwan is back on, and I would like for her to kind of go back over some of the things that actually she was bringing up in reference to redlining and the very valid points that you were talking about, Kwan, as far as from the business owner's perspective. And anyone who wants to join the live, if you already have the new link emailed to you, I sent it out to a few people. When you come in, please make sure that you mute your mic, because if someone is talking while you're coming into the live chat, into the Hangout, it's very noisy and it's difficult for that person to hear it, and it makes it difficult for everyone to come in. So those of you who want to join us and want to share your experience in reference to redlining or anything that is relevant to the topic tonight, please do so. but just make sure that your mic is muted when you come into the room, especially if someone is talking. Also, if you don't have the Hangout link and you would like to join, just let me know. I'm monitoring the chat room, so let me know if you need the link because you want to come into the conversation. I will gladly send it to you. My email address is scorpiosun16@gmail.com. Again, and I'll type it in the chat room as well. My email is scorpiosun16@gmail.com. If you send me an email, I will let you, I will get the link out to you, and make sure that when you come onto the platform that you have your mics on mute. Okay, Ms. Kwan, I'm going to give the floor back to you.
Good evening, family. Shout out to 16 for just being relentless and always helping out with the chat and moderating, everything. So I salute you, my sis. I know it can get a little frustrating, but, all hands down to you, my baby, because I know it can get a little frustrating when you're trying to do something, you're trying to push a message forward, and you're not able to. So salute to you, 16. So what I want to do again is just kind of recap on what I started off with. Last week we were talking about, the Obama presidency and how he destroyed the Black wealth in the United States. And roughly around between 2007 and 2016, basically the concentrating housing wealth for African Americans was literally destroyed because of Obama. And much of that decline in wealth was due in direct result of his policies that he enacted. His housing policies, particularly regarding foreclosures, were a disastrous failure that led to millions of families losing their homes. And with Black families suffering, hugely harsh losses, Obama had the power, the money, the political tools, and legal leverage to eliminate foreclosures as well as prevent it. And he chose not to do anything with it. If you guys can remember, during that time, 2008, there was a recession, and Congress passed the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act to help push President Obama's plan, which literally gave $787 billion to American families and small businesses. Unfortunately, for most Black families, that didn't affect us. That didn't help us at all. As a matter of fact, Black wealth was destroyed during Obama's legacy. They say that in this particular article, I don't know if you were able to get the email from 16, but in this article, which is named Foreclose, and the authors for that is Ryan Cooper and Matt Brunet. And basically what it discussed is, which is going to piggyback also on the report that he put out this year in January about the decline in Black American families' wealth. And basically it discussed, how we as African Americans are far behind white Americans when it comes to housing wealth. And more notoriously, it states how we are largely locked out of the New Deal for federal housing subsidies, which is basically the bedrock of, redlining. And if you guys are not familiar with redlining, basically redlining during 1934 to 1968, basically banks, what they did was they went out to Black communities and they basically put out a map. They drew a red line around Black communities. And what they did was they refused to lend to poor and minority communities. And if you ask me, honestly, it still exists today, even though it's illegal, but it still exists today. Because if you put in certain zip codes for Black communities, you are more than likely not to get approved for a home mortgage loan. Right now, there are presidential candidates like Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden. All of these people are basically putting forth an effort to quote unquote eliminate the disparity between Black racial wealth gaps. And unfortunately, with Kamala's Harris plan, I mean, this plan is basically saying that she's going to close the wealth gap, which is a whole bunch of nonsense. And I'm just going to pull from this article that talks about this $100 billion plan to close the racial home ownership gap. And now, mind you, Elizabeth Warren has a very similar plan, which her plan costs $500 billion and is a little bit more comprehensive than what Kamala's plan is. And it states that White House hopeful Senator Kamala Harris released a $100 billion plan to invest in Black home ownership on Saturday. Now, mind you, she was at Essence Fest, and as you all know, Essence Festival is like the number one go-to for Black women in the summer to visit. Like, I try to go to Essence Festival every year, and as you know, the majority of people that go there are Black women. So this was her spiel to Black women to try to win up Black women votes, because as you know, we vote more than anybody else. We are the most dedicated base when it comes to votership. And so basically in this article, it says that her proposal is one step toward closing the overall racial wealth gap. It says Harris cited a study stating that eliminating racial disparities in home ownership could boost the median Black wealth by $32,113 per household and shrink the wealth gap between Black and white households by 31%. It says the plan would have similar impacts for Hispanic households. The plan would establish a $100 billion grant through the Department of Housing and Urban Development, which will give up to $25,000 to families or individuals to help with down payments and closing costs. And it says that Harris campaign said the grant would benefit up to 4 million families. It says the grant is specifically for those who are purchasing a principal residence and live in that particular neighborhood for at least 10 years, which that particular neighborhood is redlined, if you will. Now, basically, it says that for families that have an income of more than $100,000 or between $125,000, grantees will get up to between $50,000 to $75,000 to go towards a loan. And she's quoted by saying, by taking these steps, we can shrink the wealth gap between Black and white households by at least 1/3, Harris says. Now, here's the problem with Kamala's $100 billion plan. First of all, most banks or financial institutions are no way in hell going to lend to anyone with a salary of $30,000. Let's just be real about that. You know, in 2018, the average medium home was about $324,800, and then the national rate was like $383,000. You know, depending on where you live, it may be between $200,000 to like $400,000 for the average median household to purchase a home. You know, if we were to share Kamala's logic in salary of $30,000 per year, that means that our down payment, let's say we have a down payment of $10,000 and you have a good credit score of between 680 to 719, and you have absolutely no debt, meaning you have no student loans, no car notes, no credit cards, or etc. That means the only thing that you can afford as far as a house is concerned is a house worth at $84,833. That means you can only afford a house that is worth $84,000. And that's a fixed home rate. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but is anybody else seeing a problem with this plan? Like for me, number one, there's no houses right now going for $84,000. And yes, most Black Americans right now, our salaries, if you look at our what we are worth in today's numbers and standards, we are right around $17,000 when it comes to income. And there was another report that this guy put out. His name is, let's see, his name is Matt Brunet. So he put out this report basically saying that our racial wealth gap is literally going to be diminished by 2053. Like it's going to be null and void. Like we're not going to have any wealth when it comes to a black family. And ironically, during Obama's presidency, the amount of millionaires for white Americans and white American families increased by 13 million more millionaires. 13 more millionaires. 13 million millionaires, if you can put that into perspective. That means that 13 million more people in the US, and I'm talking particularly about white people, literally became millionaires, and we as black people, our wealth diminished under President Obama. Now, to me, that's a problem, because a lot of people like to say, oh, well, he's our first black president, and oh, we're just so happy to have him. But unfortunately, his agenda did not benefit black families. His agenda was mostly for LGBTQ and whatever else initial they want to add to it, and also white families. It didn't benefit us as a black family. It did not. We actually had more issues. Like, we came in before he was actually elected as president. We had wealth. Now, fast forward 4 years, 8 years under his presidency, that number decreased by more than 30%. That's a problem. That is literally a problem. And, they said if this trend continues, it literally will take black families 52 million years to create the wealth of what a typical Walton family, and if you're not familiar with Walton family, that's the people who owns Walmarts, are Latino families. That's a problem. They said right now, as of right now, wealth, black median wealth is probably around $600. That means we have absolutely no money in a bank account. And according to this study, by 2053, we're not going to have anything. And that's a problem. That's just why I wanted to discuss this tonight, because as a black business owner, I have a problem with this. We cannot create wealth or leave legacies if our wealth is diminishing as a people. There's a lot of numbers in here. I don't want to kind of throw you guys off by the numbers, but I just wanted to kind of share this with you because it's a problem. And back to Obama, we have to understand that, Obama had the power. He had the legal stance. He actually had the ability to create wealth for black families, and he did absolutely nothing, zero, nothing to help us. Instead, what we got was mass foreclosures. We got economic wreckage. We have so many things that hurt the black community under his legacy. They said, Trump, not even 2 months of being into his administration, he made it harder for African Americans to buy a house, to vote, to get clean air and water, and to retire with dignity. He always boasts. I'm going to quote something he said. He said last year, this is a famous quote that he said that really just rubbed me the wrong way. He said, what do you have to lose by trying something new? He didn't promise, and he said that the result would be amazing. But he also went down and said, let me try to find this quote, because he said this about Jay-Z, and I was just kind of baffled by what he said. And he was like, tell Jay-Z, hold on, I'm going to have to pull this because I want to quote verbatim what he said to Jay-Z, which I thought was just amazing to me, because I was like, the gall, just the kahunas, the audacity for him to even quote something like that. And it shows he has absolutely no regard to blacks as a community whatsoever. He doesn't care about us. Yeah, everybody's like, oh, well, he's a racist, and, we should just vote, so we don't vote for him. But honestly, it's two ways of the same bird, because with any of the policies of the current candidates that we have right now, it's looking no different. Kamala's plan is no different from Elizabeth Warren's plan, let alone Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders' plan. You know, and we as a community, we have to figure this thing out. If we're waiting on federal government to fix this for us, then we're definitely going to be in a shithole. Definitely. We have to understand that as of right now, blacks are in trouble in more ways than other. Like, you have other racial groups coming here and surpassing off of us. Even with us, I mean, and they're here because of what we did, the policy that we put in place because of American descendants of slavery. They're here because of the benefits of us. Immigration did not increase until after 1980. This is why immigration is so important. This is why it's imperative for us to get reparations. And for reparations means a lot of different things for a lot of different people. But for us, I mean, we need the economic resources, we need the housing policies, we need the land, we need the business opportunities, we need it all so we can create black wealth and close the disparity gap between ADOS and any other racial person on this planet. Because as of right now, we are on a down trajectory of doom. And it's sad because I would have thought by voting, I'm gonna be honest with you, I did vote for Obama. The first time I was super excited just to get a black president in office. And the second one I was like, okay, I'm gonna give him one more time just to prove himself. And he did absolutely nothing for the black community. And as of today, we are still being affected by the policies he put in place right now. We have not grown not one iota as far as wealth is concerned right now, today, under his policies. Right now, President Trump is trying to dismantle a lot of Obama's policies, but in that same hand, he's still destroying black wealth. We can expect that for Trump, but it's like looking at Obama, I'm thinking that we should have at least gotten something, and we got nothing from Obama. And this, for me, it's saddening because, again, as a black business owner, I worry for my family members. I worry for the people I went to school with or the people that I know. It's very discerning to me because, for one, or should I say concerning for me, because for one, it's like, how do we all expect to prosper? My situation may not be for the average next person. You know, I may be able to create the table and create the business opportunities, and that's because I'm hustling my ass off to get it done. Am I where I want to be? Absolutely not. There's still things in place right now that prevents me as a black business owner to move forward. Plain and like, take for instance SBA loans. You know who takes advantage of that? White women. That was supposed to be in place for black women, black people. But the ones who are getting mostly the loans, white women. They're the ones that are taking advantage of that. They're acting as if minorities, and you know so goddamn well they are not minorities. There are more than probably 50% of the population in the U.S., and yet they are taking advantage of minority SBA loans put in place for people like myself, people like Professor Griff, and every other black person for that matter. And
right.
that's disheartening.
Right.
So I want to get y'all take on that. Y'all tell me what y'all think about this topic.
Okay, I'm gonna chime in real quick, Quan, and because I've been reading the chat room, and one of the first things I'd like to address is the fact that Dale totally disagrees. He says, Quan, I disagree on everything you said about Obama. Dale, I invite you to give us your counter argument. One thing we do on this platform is we can disagree, but make sure with that disagreement, you have a valid point to prove that what you or your theory or what you're trying to bring forth to enlighten the family is something that is that we can actually look up. That's something that we can reference, because just giving our opinion is one thing, but to just say you disagree with everything, it bears no weight. And I'm not picking on you, Dale. What I want you to understand, Dale, is that we have said this is a conversation that stems from last week. We had an in-depth conversation regarding Obama. As a matter of fact, more than once last week, we had an in-depth conversation about Obama and how he did absolutely nothing for Black people. So, Dale, I'm going to throw this question out to you. Can you please put in the chat room what Obama did for us? Please let us know, because clearly we can't find that research anywhere.
Okay, so this is the same guy that supports Kamala Harris with all her truancies and all the black women and black men that put in jail. Dale, I'm gonna need you to do a little bit better, my brother. Now, I'm only coming at you because I love you, and this is purely out of love.
Right.
But you have to do your research, brother. You have to do your research. And my numbers and what I'm getting, these numbers are strict factual numbers. These numbers are based on the Federal Reserve, the IRS, and what economists are basically saying. The numbers don't lie. Obama didn't do shit for the black community. Yeah, he was a black face in the White Office or White House, but he did absolutely nothing for the black community. So when I'm throwing out numbers, trust me, I've done the research to back these numbers out. That's why, as a matter of fact, what I'm going to do is share these reports and these numbers to you, because this report came out in January. And I want to share these reports with you so you can get an idea of where these numbers are coming from, so that you don't think I'm just pulling these numbers out of the air.
Right. And I put it in the chat room so they can download it, or some people got it emailed, but I did put this report that you sent to me in the chat room so that everyone has access to it.
Yeah, so it's just, Dale, just bottom line is, I appreciate your opinion, your viewpoint. I understand that, you may be supportive of it, but the numbers don't lie. It just does not support Obama doing anything for the black community. If that's the case, we will be far beyond of where we are right now. Far beyond.
Absolutely. And to add to what you're saying, Quan, I did put another article in the chat room that I sent out as an email to some people. This was from The Intercept, and it's called The New Report Looks at How Obama's Housing Policies Destroyed Black Wealth.
Yes.
And it lays out a lot of the same statistics that you were speaking of just a few minutes ago. I'm going to read a piece of this article because it kind of goes back to the report that you sent to us. As a matter of fact, the information that you sent to us in the email actually links to this. It's a different article, but it actually uses the information you sent to me as a reference. It says Barack Obama's election marked a significant turning point in American history, and it was rightly celebrated as a sign of racial progress. But Obama's presidency came at a time of economic hardship due to predatory financial practices that led to the 2007 recession. That, combined with the Obama administration's flawed housing policies, led to a major decline in African American wealth during the Obama years, according to a new report from the People's Policy Project, a new Washington, D.C. based think tank. As Quan said, statistics do not lie. Data doesn't lie. When you look at the stats, and this is coming from a different article that Quan did. It actually cites the article that Quan sent, but this is a different article. They all say the same thing. So if you find, I don't think that you'll find any article that's gonna counter what we're putting out to you tonight. In other words, this just kind of further proves that the middle class is disappearing. It says many middle class Americans saw their wealth decimated by the subprime mortgage debacle, but African Americans suffered a particularly heavy blow because so much of the population's wealth was tied up in housing. And I want everybody to understand that if you're not sure what predatory lending, or if you've ever been a victim of predatory lending, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you need to research what predatory lending is. I do know that lots of people lost their homes as a result of predatory lending. Some people are struggling to make make the enough money to even pay these mortgages and end up losing their home, or they have to do without something to make sure that the mortgage is paid, so to speak.
Hmm. I want to read. I want to read some numbers
Okay.
to, and this basically talks about the racial wealth divide. And it says over the past 3 decades, a polarizing racial wealth divide has grown between white households and households of color. And it says, since the early 1980s, median wealth among Black and Latino families has stuck at least 10,000. Meanwhile, the white household median wealth grew from $105,000 to $140,000, adjusting for inflation. It basically says between 1983 and 2016, now mind you, this 2016 is under Obama's presidency, the median Black family saw their wealth drop by more than half after adjusting for inflation, compared to a 33% increase for the median white household. Over that same period, the number of households with 10 million or more skyrocketed by 856%. The median Black family today owns $3,600, $3,600, just 2% of the 147,000 of wealth the median white family owns. The median Latino family has assets worth 6,600, which is just 4% as much as the median white family. In other words, the median white family has 41 more times wealth than the median Black family, and 22 times more wealth than the median Latino family. Now, I don't know if Dale is looking at these numbers, but seriously, Dale, like these numbers came much under Obama's legacy. Now, I don't know if you want to believe this or not, or I don't know if you just clueless or just want to believe in the faith of Obama and what he brought to the table. You know what? I commend you, but brother, you have to do the research. In the words of Jay-Z, the numbers do not lie. They just don't.
Absolutely. And we've kind of cut out the research by bringing the information to you. A lot of times we'll find things, and I'm not going to say it's just me. I get a lot of information emailed to me by the Sirius Mindz family. So I'm not the only person that's doing the research. We have a lot of people in the chat that actually email me on a consistent basis with topics, with statistics, with information, all of these things that sometimes we're able to address on the platform, and sometimes all I can do is just put the information out there, but it's up to you to click the articles, click the videos, watch the videos, and get that knowledge, or take the time to read these documents that are being forwarded to you. So it takes away the time of researching. It's being, I mean, we're hand feeding it to you, but it's up to you to read it. I mean, it's up to you to what you want to do with the information.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, I mean, we can't. Don't base your. I don't vote, but I'm going to say to those people that do vote, don't base your vote on number one, what seems to be looks, who looks more attractive. Number two, pay attention to what they're bringing to the table, as far as whenever they have these debates, or whenever they make the speech, have these speeches or whatnot. Pay attention to what they're saying, but you also need to pay attention to what they are not saying. If you want to analyze a person, to the extent of how I analyze people, for example, I pay attention to what a person says, but I also pay attention to what is not being said. If I don't hear something, it brings up a couple of red flags for me. Or it could be something that they are saying that I'm like, in my head kind of questioning, okay, where are they going with this? If I'm not clear on something, I will ask the questions, but at the same time, like I said, make sure you analyze what people say and what they don't say, because sometimes it's intentional, and then sometimes they're trying to talk over your head because they have another agenda. It's just so much out there. Take the time, and for those of you who don't know what I mean by analyze, break it down.
Hmm.
Just break down, dissect the information, spend time with it, and and you make the decision for yourself. We're not here to make you think one way or the other. We're just here to give you the facts, and you do with it as you please. And I do have a short audio from TED Talks that I would like for us to listen to. It's about 9 minutes long. I did upload the video, the YouTube video that you sent via email, Quan. It was by Tone Talks, and I actually listened to the whole 60-minute video, and there was some very valid points that were brought up in that YouTube video. So for those of you who want to actually listen to that video, because we don't have time tonight to listen to it, it is on my YouTube page. If you go to the Sirius Mindz July playlist, it is in that playlist. But today, we're going to listen to a very short video by a fellow named Rodney Foxworth. And the video, basically, what he's going to be talking about is why we need to combat the growing racial wealth chasm. And this brother brings about a lot of valid points. He's an entrepreneur, but he's also he does a lot of philanthropy work. He's a consultant. I mean, so he understands the ins and outs of business, just like you're well versed in business. I'm getting there, but I want you all to hear it from another perspective. And Quan, I'm going to kind of just pause it every once in a while so we can kind of dissect what he's saying, because some of the stuff, honestly, I'm soaking in, because I'm still trying to learn that business aspect, the entrepreneur words. But the guy gives very good information, so let's kind of listen to this and dissect this video.
Okay.
Let's see, here we go.
228 years. If nothing were to change, it would take 228 years for the typical African-American household to equal the wealth of the typical white American household today. This is what we refer to as the racial wealth gap. But in fact, it's actually a bit of a misnomer to refer to it as a gap. Because since the 1980s, the gap has expanded and accelerated, so much so that we're really facing a chasm. And this is not a challenge that is posed against just African Americans and other minority groups. This is a challenge for all of us. It's predicted that in the next few decades, America will actually become a majority minority country, with most Americans being on the other side of the racial wealth chasm. So we know that the median wealth for a white American household is $142,000. It drops to $14,000 for the median wealth for a Latino and non-white Hispanic household. And then it drops even further down to $11,000 for the typical African American household. However, when we begin to talk about the racial wealth chasm nationally, it becomes a very overwhelming question. And so we're going to bring it back home a little bit, make it more personal, and talk a bit about my hometown of Baltimore. So Baltimore is a place with unbridled promise, but also several challenges, one of which is structural racism, mass incarceration, and post-industrialization. 63% of Baltimore is African American. And since 1969, between 1969 and 2009, there have been over 95,000 jobs that have been lost in the city. Now, most of those jobs were quality paying jobs that allowed individuals to support their families. And most of those jobs are now gone. This is a story that's very familiar in places like Indianapolis, Baltimore, Cleveland, and places across the country. 23% of Baltimoreans live below the poverty line. However, when you break it down between the races, it actually boils down to over 24% of African Americans in Baltimore live below the poverty line, compared to only 8% of white Baltimoreans. Additionally, 61% of Baltimoreans live in low-income households. And again, this is not just a story of Baltimore, this is a story of many communities across the country. We spend over $289 million a year incarcerating Baltimoreans in the state of Maryland. And this is really close to home. We have 19,000 African American males between the ages of 25 and 54 that are prematurely away from daily civic life in Baltimore City. I turned 33 this summer.
Okay, just in case you didn't hear what he just said, he said 19,000 Black males between the age of 25 and 54 are missing from the area or incarcerated. I don't know how many of you in the chat are from the Baltimore area. I do have a dear friend who grew up in Baltimore, and everything that Rodney Foxworth is talking about in this video is absolute truth. And I can say this because I know someone personally who is a very dear friend of mine that grew up in the Baltimore area. So this kind of is just confirmation that everything that she and I have ever talked about, this stuff is real. I mean, we can't dismiss numbers. And so anything that you heard in that first section of the video, Quan, that you'd like to elaborate on?
Yeah, it just goes back to what I was saying about how we as Black Americans by 2053 will have absolutely no wealth. I mean, just look at the average Black family, what their quote unquote wealth is worth in today's numbers. That's, I mean, $17,000 for Latinos and it goes down for Black Americans. Think about this. They came after us, meaning they came on the Blacks of American descendants of slaves, meaning that we put policy in place to help most migrants come to the US. But yet they are managing to surpass us as a group, and yet we are worth less than Latinos. If you don't see a problem in that, then I don't know what else to tell you. Like, we need to do something. If we're waiting on the federal government to do it for us, yes, there's a lot of talk for reparations right now. And I hope and pray that we are able to get reparations. But that's a long ways from now.
Right.
So I'm looking for solution-based policies. What can we do today? What can we do right now to help Black families progress and get to the next level? How can we catapult ourselves to get to the next level?
Right, because the reparations issue is definitely one that is being talked about. And honestly, truth be told, I believe that it's being brought forth or talked about more these days because we have an election ahead of us.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, otherwise, this topic would be one that, you know, a small group of people would probably, you know, go to Congress with to continue to try to fight for it. But I think that they're highlighting the reparations issue simply because we have a presidential election coming up. And like you said, Quan, we, you know, even if we are granted reparations, don't expect this to be something that we're going to get immediately upon a new president, because that's not going to happen. So, I mean, even if they do decide to give us, you know, reparations, I don't think this is going to be something that will happen quickly. And I think that a lot of people have a misconception. of reparations. And like I said, even if we do get it, I don't see that happening right away. That's going to be something that they're going to phase in. And so in the meantime, the question is, what can we do now? What are some short-term goals that we can put into place? What are some actions we can take, in this moment in time to try and help with this racial gap? I mean, the wealth gap. And in the event that, number one, the reparations don't come right away, which I highly think that that's going to happen, even if it's approved. Or number two, they're going to completely just say no reparations, and they close the book.
Yeah.
So you
So
have to have an alternative.
So exactly. So that's why on last week's show, I basically made the spiel about whatever you're passionate about, make it a business. We have to be willing to start the businesses, whether it's, I know sometimes you need, startup loans or SBA loans or grants or micro loans to get it done. But sometimes it takes you pooling sources or resources together to make that happen. Prime example, like I have a huge group of client base who are Asians and who are Indians. And I've seen these people come together. Prime example, I did a grocery store design. It was four couples that came together who all pooled their money equally, four partnerships. So there's four couples, so it's eight in total. All that came together, they all pooled their sources together. So all their families took all their savings and put together, and they said, okay, we're going to have four equal partnerships. And basically, what they were able to do, instead of going to get an SBA loan, they used the money that they all accumulated to start a business. And they're booming right now. You know what else they did? All of them moved in together. They were all living out the house. First, it was one couple. They moved in three other couples, and eventually, every time somebody was able to buy a house, one moved out. And eventually, the last one stayed in the house, and that house became their house. I was like, if black people can have that kind of mindset, that kind of hustle, like we all in this together, like one for all for one, man,
Right.
we will be unstoppable. Because this is what they do when they build businesses. The same with Asians. They have damn near, even the Mexicans, damn near 10, 15 people living in a household. But what they're doing is accumulating all of their resources, all of their money, until each one is able to branch out and do their own businesses or have what they call quote unquote wealth. And
Mm-hmm.
I think, as you know, as a people, we have to gravitate towards that kind of mindset where we can build upon lending on one another and not having this old petty nonsense going on and this crab in a barrel mentality. No, we should be able to pool our resources to be able to start the businesses. Sometimes you don't always need a business loan to get a business started. And I'm going to throw that to you, 16. A lot
Right.
of times you got to source and then you got to just pull whatever resources you got. And sometimes you got to go blindly, not having the money in place, not having the building in place or all the things or the mechanisms you need to start a business. Is just do it and allow and just build upon that. That's what I did. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
look. I went on straight off on a whim and just a strong desire to want to do better and want to see my family do better. And I knew that if I did it, that
Mm-hmm.
it was going to help the people that comes behind me.
Right.
And so I was willing to do it without having a loan in place, not knowing what the hell was going to happen. But I believe that, you know what? God didn't just put this in me. He just didn't give me this vision just to sit on it. I'm
Right.
just going to do it, and hopefully it all works out. If it doesn't, then wisdom gain, lesson learned. I'll just pick up the pieces and start over. But everybody does not have that courage to do that. But again, for us as Black people, we have to find solution based policies, put them in place, and find a way where we can build upon and create our own legacies. Because as you can see, the federal government right now is playing chicken when it comes to reparations. The only
Exactly.
reason why it is this discussion. You're right. Now we've been discussing it for years, and I give credit to Yvette Carnell and Tone Talks and Dr. Sandy Darity and all these folks, and even the folks back in the 70s and 60s that was talking about reparations. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's been talked about for a long time, but right now because it's in the forefront, ideally because they want the Black turnout vote. And they
Right.
are seeing that we are not cutting corners. Like, if you want our votes, then you better come up with a solution for reparations, because we're not voting for you unless you do so. And sometimes that's what you got to do. You got to almost have this like mafia like mentality. It's like, either look, you gonna do it or else, you
Exactly.
know.
You have
And
to
that's
be
just how we have to
aggressive
do it.
about the issue. If we want to, we have, first of all, we have to set clear intentions about what we want, and you stick to it. You know, be very clear about what you, because the government, if you're not, if the intentions of reparations is not clear and well drawn out, with the expectations lined out to where there's nothing to question, nothing left to question, then they can't say, well, you know, well, you don't have your stuff together. Don't make it easy for them to discredit us. And that was something that I was trying to put into the chat room. I think it was maybe one day last week when I was typing in the chat room, as far as approaching the reparations issue. We have to make sure that it's clear exactly what we want. We can't go in there with estimations, and you know, because all of these things, all of these estimations and guesses, and you know, things that don't hold solid weight, the government will use that as an excuse to say, you know, they will find a loophole. We know what type of government we're dealing with. So of course they're going to wait for that moment to insert an excuse as to why they're not going to give us reparations. So we have to make sure that the plan for reparations is solid. It's actually backed by the research that's been done, and have everything just well drawn out. So it's plain, but at the same time, the intentions and the expectations are clear, and then we go from there. Leave nothing to question, in other words.
Okay, so I'm reading a comment right now from Raheem Jumbo.
Mhm.
He basically stated that none of you were slaves. Why are you asking for money from the white man? Okay, first of all, we were, and we are descendants of slaves. And
Mhm.
reparations is a debt, DEBT, owed from something trauma caused by a federal agency or entity. So yes, it's a debt owed. The wealth of America was created on the backs of slaves. Okay, Mitch McConnell right now, he was all against slavery, and then come to find this jackhole family owned slaves. And matter of fact, had children, mulattoes, they want to call it, and all of that. It's just like, dude, the audacity. You probably got some black cousins running around here, ATs and uncles right now, and you against it? But that's just the gall, the kahunas of white supremacy. See, what you got to understand is reparation talk is a debt owed. We built the wealth of this country.
Exactly. And he, Raheem is saying, blame your Democrats. Well, here's my response to that. The White House that our president is currently in was built off the back of our ancestors.
Come
The
on.
land was stolen from our ancestors. Some of our ancestors came here by way of slave ship, and some of our ancestors were already here. I mean, they
Mhm.
had everything stripped from them, and they were in enslaved. They were in captivity as well. Nevertheless, what I'm saying is, our ancestors were colonized and used as property and saw as property, and that's how our ancestors were documented as property. So no one gave us, or no one, we're not asking anybody to give us anything. This is owed to us, Rahi
Exactly.
Jumbo. And let me respond to what you said about Lyndon Johnson. Lyndon Johnson put welfare in place. See, I can tell you're one of those people who don't research. So let me shut down your comment real quick and let you know that Lyndon Johnson put welfare in place for white women. So
That's
Raheem,
right.
I don't know if you're a white man and or you have a white wife, but the welfare system was put in place for white women. And let me also go further and let you know that if you do your research,
White women.
that the majority of people who are on welfare or white people.
Please say
I
it again.
go and
Say
find
it again.
some
Okay.
research to discredit what I just said. When you come with some research, then I'll pay attention, because I'm one of those people, I'm passionate about my own. So don't tell me something or give me a stupid ass opinion if you can't come with research, because nobody's asking for anything. Okay, this is old, has been owed to us 400 years.
Longer than that, if you ask me. Okay, so first of all, as far as reparations is concerned, the same reparations that they can give Jews and Japanese and Indians, and as a matter of fact, 9/11 survivors, who, as a matter of fact, recently, this was maybe about a month or so ago, who are trying to get it extended for families who were affected by the whole 9/11 quote unquote debauchery.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just them. There's a plenty of groups in the U.S. who are getting reparations. You don't see them getting flapped by anybody saying,
Right.
"Oh, why are you asking for reparations?" It's a debt owed. Plain and simple. We built this country. We are owed that. We're not asking for anything. We're here to come and take it. It's ours.
We
Plain
are,
and simple. We're not
we're
begging.
here
We're saying, God damn it, it's our, hey, this is what we built. Right now, you are only here because of what the blood that was shed, the women that were raped, the sweat, the tears, everything that we put forth in this country is because of black slavery.
mm-hmm.
That's it. We ain't asking for shit. We here to take it. We're not asking for nothing.
Right.
We
And
saying, okay, pay up.
take back what is rightfully ours.
That's right.
So your IQ, Mr. Rahim, doesn't mean anything to me, because if your IQ is 183 and you were born in Ethiopia, then you would know that you need to research and stop putting your damn opinions in the comment section without having researched. Okay, because
That's a troll. That's a troll.
again, yeah,
Um,
he controlled, but so can I.
well,
With the data
I,
I had today, I have time.
okay, so I will say this, just so everybody understands and kind of bring this back to what we were discussing. Not only did slavery put into place racial wealth gaps and locked us out, but the red lining of these districts preventing us from getting mortgage loans, preventing us from going to schools and being accepted. There's a lot of different things. I can go down a whole laundry list of things that we were locked out of.
Right.
And bottom line is, yes, and it comes all the way down to these whole quote unquote half as put together policies that they're trying to throw at us now. They're trying to basically put a band-aid on a whole just debauchery of just nonsense that was created because one, they wanted to did not include us into the whole wealth equation. You know, so when it comes, even I'm looking at Claudia that says explains black credit. That is true. Even as a black person, out the gate, we jump off at 500 credit scores. White people get 6, 7, and 800 credit scores out the gate. We
Right.
don't get those kind of measures. We don't.
Right. And I'm gonna say this as having a credit score that's well over 750. I can go into a bank today with a credit score that's over 750. And I am probably not going to get the same loan, or get denied the loan, or let's not say get denied the loan, but may not necessarily get a good rate as if the same as a white person who walks in with a credit score of 530.
That's
So,
right.
like, no matter what your credit score is, there are still issues, there are things put in place to keep us from rising. In other words, you know, the thing with the redlining, those issues, and you know, refusing to give us loans and whatnot, all of that, all of the things that we should have access to, we don't. So,
Exactly.
and as I look up, I'm looking at the comments, and you know, it's baffling, some of the comments we have in here. I can tell people who actually take the time to research or or read about this stuff so that they're educated and well versed and can have a serious conversation. And I already know, I know there's a couple of trolls in here, and so they don't think I realize they're in here trolling, but it's okay
You
because
know what? But it goes to show you we must have hit a nerve. But clearly, for them to be in here, it
right.
must have hit a nerve. But at the end of the day, I want us to realize where we are currently
Hmm.
as it relates to the racial disparities when it comes to wealth gap. I want us to understand what it's going to take for us to get over these limitations. And again, the federal government is in no rush to help us get out of these situations. See, they want us to be the bottom cast for a reason because it
Right.
helps them further their wealth with their families and the legacies that they're going to leave behind. See, we have to understand how the system of white supremacy operates. Everything is put in place, as I've shared last week. They cannot beat us at an equal playing field. So these systems are put in place to prevent that from us coming up. This is why we have to come up with, again, solution based policies to help us get over these hurdles. Now, if that means starting a business, if that means moving in with mama and you guys go and get a house together on a loan, pooling in your resources for this, so you can count your salaries together so you can get the house loan. Or maybe it may be on the flip side where you don't buy the house right now, you just rent and you save the money until you're able to buy the house where you don't need a loan. You see,
Right.
there's a million ways to skin a cat, a million ways. And so you just got to know how to work the system. One thing I've learned about being a business owner is how to finesse the system and allow it to work to my benefit.
Right.
Because the system is put in place to help them, not me. Yeah, we have quote unquote these programs in place that supposedly supposed to help the minorities and minority women in particular, but you have these white women and all these other people and all these other races coming to take advantage of it. So we have to be able to work the system, finesse it to our ability, whatever that may be. I don't know where everybody is in currently in life as far as their economics and financing is concerned. But right now, what we need to be focused on is where are we going to be in 2053? Are we going to be part of that statistic? Is our wealth going to be zero? And I'm not just talking about you. We including your whole family, that whole
Right.
roster, because you may be doing well, but is your family doing well? How many people are you taking with you if you have that wealth? Or is it just for you? Or is it just selfish and you just not including everybody else? Because for me, I'm looking at for my sister, my mama, my niece, my nephew, my aunties, my cousin. I want all of us so they don't have to come to me begging for no damn money. That's it. I'm just going to be selfish and say that. At the end of the day, I just don't want them always begging me and looking for a handout from me. I don't mind helping them, but at the end of the day, I want them to be able to prosper so that they're not always looking for a handout. So
Exactly.
that's why I share the knowledge with people like you, 16.
Hmm.
Anybody that comes to me and said, well, do you know I had this certain situation? I share the knowledge because I want to see you prosper, especially as a black person, especially as a black woman. I want to be able to see you prosper and do well because I know it's going to affect you and many generations to come.
Exactly. And I appreciate that, all the stuff that you sent and you share with me all the time. I actually take the time to read everything that people send to me, especially things that, can benefit in the long run, benefit my family. And like you said, because I have the mentality of teach a man to fish. I'm not one of those, like my family comes to me all the time for money because I grew up, as I stated last week, I grew up in generational poverty. My
Mhm.
family's been plagued by poverty for several generations, and with that mindset, and it you know the only thing that I could think of, my driving force is let me be the person to step up to the plate, and get my, because I'm the first college graduate in my family,
Mhm.
and I'm going to also be the first doctor in my family. So
Come on.
I'm opening the gates so that my family I'm going to spread that knowledge with them and help them to build their own legacies. In other words, if I have to be the guinea pig, so to speak, I don't mind, because in the long run, it's going to help. It's going to trickle back, and it's doing what I intended for it to do, which is to get my family out of poverty and to also reach back for community members, not just my family. I also look to help community as well. I'm always out in the community doing something to help the next person. I'm nowhere close to being rich, but if I can help someone, I can. And sometimes the only help that I can give is share knowledge. It's not always monetary, but knowledge is something that people have to understand. You can't go to Walmart and buy knowledge off of the shelf.
That's right.
The things that you can't go into a store and purchase are worth all of the money that's in your wallet or in your bank account.
All
And
of the
that's
way
what
to
people need
go.
to think of. Yes, that's what people need to think about. You know, you need to keep in mind that you're building for the future. And that's the mindset I had to go to today to kind of just combat what I was dealing with since this morning. And, I would go back and forth, because I'm an emotional person. When I get upset, sometimes I have to breathe. And this first thing that Professor Griff said when I spoke to him, he was like, "You're going to be all right, Cletus," is what he called me, or something like that today. He'll lighten the mood. But I'm one of those people that I am focus driven. When I set a goal, I'm gonna do whatever I have to make sure that I meet that goal. And I'm trying to get through this without getting too emotional, because my family, I understand why they have the mindset they have. And if I could change their mindset and let them know that they can get out, because if I can do it, they can do it. But they can't see it because we've been poor for so long. We struggled for so long that they can't see it for themselves. So then I have to guide the way. And so if I need to be that guiding light, I will. If I have to do the same for other people who are not necessarily my biological family, but they are family to me, or they can be strangers. It doesn't matter to me. I'm a teacher, and that is always, that teacher part of me is it's gonna stay with me. Even though I'm transitioning out of the profession, I plan to go back to it. But at this point, I have to make some shifts. I have to make some changes, but in the same time, it's going to be for the greater good. So I like the build that we did tonight. And I think that this is a conversation that's more than likely going to be brought up again, because it's a conversation that can be had, over several live streams, or several, over a course of, because you can dissect this into different pieces. Tonight, we hit upon how Obama contributed to the demise of Black wealth, and that's just one other angle that we are looking at it from. Just like last week, we looked at it from a couple of different other perspectives, but it always circles back to the same thing. And if we don't identify those things that are hurting us and not helping us, how are we going to ever fix them? Because a band-aid is temporary. We need permanent fixes. So I want to play a little bit more of that clip before we close out, because let's see, it has about 5 minutes left. Let's listen to the rest of what Rodney Foxworth says, and then we'll close out the show. Let's see.
This absence in daily life is typically caused by a number of factors, but specifically incarceration and premature death caused by homicide, but also through health issues. Now, this represents 45% of African American men between the ages of 25 and 54 in Baltimore City. Now let's get down to some of the economic disparities. White households in Baltimore have 2 times the income of an African American household. 33%, a third of African American households, have net negative net worth. compared to only 15% of white households. Now, one of the other challenges is that there are opportunities, there are jobs in places like Baltimore City and the surrounding counties. However, it takes most individuals over 90 minutes on public transit to get to quality paying jobs. However, working age Baltimoreans, only 30% have regular access to vehicles. So that means they're taking public transit and it makes it really difficult to get to quality jobs when it takes over 90 minutes to get to. Now here's the kicker. Only 3% of Black-owned businesses in Baltimore have employees, mostly sole proprietors. And this is a problem across the country. However, 26% of white-owned businesses have jobs. And this is really where there's an opportunity for attacking the issue of the racial wealth chasm. There's actually mounting evidence that business ownership is the best remedy for the racial wealth chasm. In fact, more so than home ownership. And this is where we have tremendous opportunity to invest in business ownership and entrepreneurship in ways that will advance across all racial classes, but in particular for African Americans and Latinos. Just as an example, while only 3% of Black-owned businesses across the country have employees, if we were to add one employee to 15% of those employee-less businesses, and then were to add 2 employees to the African American owned businesses that do have employees, we'd have an additional 600,000 jobs in this country. The Center for Global Policy Studies actually estimates that if we were to eliminate racial bias in entrepreneurship and small business ownership in this country, we would add over $300 million, actually 300 billion with a B, dollars to our economy. So again, this is not a challenge just for minority groups in this country. Those will be jobs for all Americans. However, one of the biggest challenges is that, particularly for African American and Latinos, having access to capital to begin businesses is a huge challenge. To begin them and then also grow them. The Kauffman Foundation, which is a foundation dedicated to entrepreneurship, estimates that it takes at least $30,000 to begin a business. But you saw the stats earlier. How do you start a business with that will cost you $30,000 if your household wealth is only 14 or 11? The Small Business Administration, which is really tasked with making sure that we have access to capital for all entrepreneurs, and in particular, those that are marginalized, in 2015, only 2% of their loans went to African Americans, compared to 70% for white Americans. If you're familiar with the tech startup space, if you're someone that's looking for venture capital, less than 1% of venture capital goes into the hands of an African American startup founder. They don't even know, because it's such a small data point, how many Latino and Hispanic founders are receiving venture capital, but we do know that it's less than 1%. In Baltimore, 85% of individuals that are incarcerated are African American. But as I mentioned before, Baltimore is represented 63% African American. So imagine if, instead of representing 85% of the prison rate, the incarceration rate, in a place like Baltimore, African Americans represented 85% of small business ownership, represented 85% of entrepreneurs. How the economy will look differently. Consider that in the state of Maryland, it costs nearly $40,000 a year to incarcerate an individual. And as I said earlier, it costs $30,000 to start a new business. Imagine that instead of incarcerating individuals for $40,000 a year, we actually began to give and invested in individuals to the tune of $30,000 to start new businesses. The question before all of us is, do we want to be a country in which we incarcerate and put people in jail? Or do you want to be a country in which we invest in small businesses, entrepreneurship, and job creation? Thank you.
This brother was on point with everything that he had to say. So in closing, Kwan, I just want to say to you that pretty much everything that you said tonight was confirmed in this short 10-minute video. He brought to light everything that you were bringing, you were basing your statistical information on, all the facts that you came with tonight. I mean, the information is out there, and if you cross-reference it, you will notice that they're all the same. Because statistics are statistics. I mean, you can't change them. And there's no way of manipulating it. It is what it is. So at the end of the day, what we want to take away from this is the fact that, do we need to have more in-depth conversations about things such as redlining, starting up small businesses, investments, or pooling money together and creating a business with multiple investors if you don't have enough money to create a standalone business? Those are some things that we can definitely visit on one of the Sister Cypher days. It could be this coming Thursday, it could be next week, but those are some very in-depth issues that we need to look at as a people. I'm shifting over to becoming a business owner, and at the same time, it's not easy when you don't have a business mindset, but when you put your mind to something, you can do it. And I want to close out with a message that kind of hit home for me, and it came at the right time. It literally popped up on my phone at the time that I needed to read it. But first, before I read it, I want to just tell you, Kwan, that I appreciate you so much because you got me through the day. I haven't spoken to anybody else outside of the family besides Professor Griff. He knows a little bit, but today was a very tough day for me, and I don't want to go in depth with that information right now. It's just know that it's work related, and you all know my story when it comes to my job and the issues that are surrounding my position. So with that being said, I want to make sure that you all understand that I'm not a quitter. And whenever obstacles come in my way, sometimes I will reach out to people to give me that tough love. I don't always fall back on my family because my family deals with another set of issues. But the universe always sends somebody at the right time. And out of the blue, when I was in the middle of pitching a fit with my supervisor at work, Quan sends me a text message just to check on me. And it was in that moment, and I told her, I said, Quan, this is nothing more than divine timing, because we had no idea. She had no idea what I was going through. And I was having a moment when she texted me. And she said the best words that a sister could ever share with another sister. And for that, Quan, I appreciate you so much.
How much love.
Times are not always easy, and I've been through a lot of storms. I anticipate there will be more. Because I don't want to fail my people, I'm very hard on myself. And so I tend to go deep with things and I'm very self-critical. I'm very hard on myself. So I appreciate you, Quan, for what you did today. And I look forward to continuing to build that relationship with you and everybody else on the Sirius Mindz platform. You all are like family to me. All of you who show up every night. All of you who still come back, even though we have technical issues. I couldn't get the mic to work. This equipment is brand new, and I was getting upset all over again because I just made an investment with my job at risk. I still made an investment because I want to continue this Sista Cypher. I want these dialogues, these conversations, these builds to continue. So I made a small investment in some equipment, and it was working just fine right before we went live. But sometimes you have to take a L when you go live, but nevertheless, I'm always going to come back. So I'm going to leave you with this quote as it was left with me today, and I'll close out the show. Tomorrow is mic check 1 2 1 2, so make sure that you tune in tomorrow for mic check 1 2 1 2, and also don't forget about the disaster preparation class. Those of you who are interested in signing up and you haven't already, the class is this Sunday, July 14th at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So we're looking for about 10 more people. So if you know someone who could benefit from this class, please spread the message so that we can get this class out. We have some very vital information that we want to share with you as far as preparing for not just natural disasters, but some assisted disasters, so to speak. Those of you who know what I'm saying. So I'm going to close out with this particular quote that was in my inbox, and just out of the blue, it stuck with me. It says, "Don't be afraid to start over again. This time you aren't starting from scratch. You're starting from experience." And in closing, family, peace and blessings. Have a great evening. Thank you for coming back. And I will see you all on tomorrow night in the chat room. I look forward to tomorrow. Today is pretty much over. So tomorrow morning is a new day. And I'm thankful. Peace and blessings, family.
Good night, love.